All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I hope all of you had a nice, quick dinner. It's my pleasure to announce the next speaker, and a gentleman that I call probably every other day down in Texas, and so he's kind of like, God forbid, I don't want to say he's like my father. He's just a little older than I am, so. But anyway, he's that too. J. Gary Shaw is our next speaker. J. Gary Shaw is a retired architect from Cleburne, Texas, and a first-generation assassination researcher who began studying the case on November 22, 1963. In 1966, after reading Penn Jones Jr.'s Forgive My Grief, Volume 1, Shaw met with Jones, and the two became close friends and colleagues. Shaw wrote several articles for Jones' newspaper, the Midlothian Mirror. In 1976, Shaw and researcher Larry Ray Harris published Cover Up, the governmental conspiracy to conceal the facts about the public execution of John Kennedy. Shaw, along with Larry Howard and Bud Fensterwald, co-founded the JFK Assassination Information Center in Dallas, the AIC. Shaw was an officer and director of the Assassination Archives and Research Center in Washington, D.C. In 1992, Shaw and Parkland Hospital Dr. Charles Crenshaw wrote JFK, The Conspiracy of Silence, which quickly became a New York Times bestseller. Recently, Shaw began providing his personal assassination collection to Project JFK, CSI Dallas, for research purposes, and that organization is online, and you can get on that line, which is Project JFK. If you put that online, you'll see all of Shaw's works. So that is Project JFK, CSI Dallas. So without further ado, let me introduce you to a young gentleman who we all admire and respect. J. Gary Shaw, ladies and gentlemen. And get as close as you can.
I'm not completely technical dumb, but almost. Thank y'all for having me up here. Professor, thank you for doing this. I think it's worthwhile, and I don't know how many's listening and watching on the Zoom, but I hope there's some, because there's been some really good stuff come out here. I also want to thank Olney College. You know, they don't have to do this. This is not a popular subject in a lot of places, so I appreciate that. That they're having us here. I want to say thanks to the Kansas boys. They got me over here, and that's Brian and Casey and David, and yeah. You may be saying, "Oh no, not another Daddy killed JFK story." I don't know whether you can take two in one day, but we're gonna go through this. I'm going to stick real close to my notes, because if I don't, this thing can take you so many directions, it's unreal. So the presentation is about an aspect of the JFK assassination that has been described as controversial. It's been misunderstood. It's been called erroneous, fabricated, disinformation, misinformation, and I've been called a dupe, among other terms. On the other hand, myself and others believe this subject matter has real merit and should be thoroughly researched and investigated. Today you'll get a look at several items very few have ever seen. My current plan is to make these items available for study on the Project JFK CSI Dallas website. So today you folks will have an opportunity to see and decide for yourself as to whether this particular aspect concerning the assassination has any validity at all. I don't have the time to give you all the details, so I'm just going to ask you to bear with me and listen real fast. You can see the two people up there. The one on the left you recognize readily. The other one is Roscoe White. and I kind of titled this Fable or Fact. And what do you think? Not what someone else has told you about it or said about it, but what you personally think after seeing this. This is an alternative to the government's lone assassin theory. Roscoe White says he was one of the assassins. So in a nutshell, this is what has transpired with this story. While in the Marines, military records show that Roscoe White and Lee Harvey Oswald were either sailing together on the same ship or were stationed together at the same location for a total of 181 days. In late 1963, a few weeks before President Kennedy was to come to Dallas, Mrs. Roscoe White, Geneva, went to work for Jack Ruby. Roscoe joined the Dallas Police Department, and Lee went to work at the Texas School Book Depository. In Corps training, Roscoe was considered an excellent rifleman, and Lee, of course, as you know, was deemed a very poor shot. Toward the end of their enlistment, both men requested and were granted a hardship discharge. In 1982, 22-year-old Ricky White, Roscoe's son, rediscovered his now deceased father's military foot locker. Found in the foot locker were Roscoe's military records and a number of other artifacts. Also in the foot locker was a receipt for $100,000 in bearer bonds, an unmarked bank safety box key, and his father's handwritten diary. It was several years before Ricky, who, to put it mildly, was not an avid reader, finally arrived at the diary's entry for November 22, 1963. That Ricky was stunned at what he read, perhaps a better word would have been shattered. Even that, I think, was a real understatement. How would you feel in reading the diary where a man confesses to killing the president? In late 1987, while attempting to get to the bottom of the safety box and bearer bond issue, Ricky approached the local district attorney, told him his story, and requested assistance. That was a mistake. The DA spooked and went to the local FBI office with the information. Ricky had told him what the diary said and some of those things. And what did the FBI do? They immediately began surveillance of both Ricky and his wife, Tricia. This unwarranted spying on a private citizen by the FBI occurred prior to their seeing Roscoe White's material. Why such concern if Oswald was the lone assassin? Finally, after a few days of nothing surveillance, the agents went to the DA and told him to go tell White the FBI needed to speak with him. On January 13, 1988, 2 FBI agents went to the White home, threatened Ricky with a severe penalty if he withheld evidence in a criminal case, then told him to bring everything he had of Roscoe's to their office. At the FBI office, the agents, while on a speakerphone with a Washington senator, grilled and ridiculed Ricky. Following several hours of harassing inquisition, they told Ricky that what he had was not true and was of no value to anyone. Thoroughly beaten down and humiliated, Ricky went to his home, laid on his bed, and wept. And the diary suddenly disappeared, and Ricky has never been able to recover it. Ricky is dead certain that one of the FBI agents secretly swiped the diary. I won't go into the whole story of that, but it's a very plausible one. Of course, and you'll hear this phrase often with the FBI categorically denies all knowledge of the diary. And where have we heard this before? Let me say this to start off with. Truthfully, I don't know. The whole thing could turn out to be a cruel and malicious hoax. I don't think so. But what I do know is that Ricky didn't make this up. Therefore, it is my sincere hope that brighter minds than mine will make a close and unbiased examination of this information. Needless to say, I only have a short time today to give you a small glimpse into the information that, I believe, was undoubtedly left behind by Roscoe White. So let's get started. As we all know, the government's official versions of President John F. Kennedy's assassination would have you believe that his murder was carried out by a 24-year-old ex-Marine with communist sympathies and that he acted alone and unaided. The story I'm about to relate concerns what appears to be the handwritten confession of a 28-year-old ex-Marine acting in concert with Confederates and while under the cover of a Dallas policeman, and that he is the one that shot Kennedy. The Roscoe White story asks that you take another look at what happened. In truth, the story I'm about to relate to you has been and continues to be received with much skepticism and ridicule. So you can decide which story makes the most sense. You can choose which version of the JFK assassination rings more true to you. I always ask, usually when I talk about this, why do I believe the Roscoe White story? Well, I put down several reasons. Number one, I believe the honesty and integrity of Ricky and Tricia White. Number two, the manner in which the story came to us. We didn't go out and try to scratch around and find this, it came to us. Number three, the manner in which the story was attacked by officials, certain mainstream media sources, and the lone nut crowd. Number three, the provenance and authenticity of the artifacts involved. I'll be showing you those. The indisputable, number four, association between Roscoe, Jack Ruby, and Oswald. Number five, the conspicuous agitation and uneasiness of the FBI agents prior to their seeing and reading the diary and the surveillance of both Ricky and Tricia, as well as the telephone hookup with a Washington senator while he's being grilled. This is especially significant in view of the previous duplicity and destruction of evidence on the part of certain FBI agents and officials. This is Ricky White with his wife, Tricia. He's about 62 now. He's been married 42 years. He has 2 daughters and several grandchildren. He owns and operates his own business and has for about 15, 20 years. He's just an honest old Texas country boy, and they made light of him and ridiculed him. And when the first story came out, he was an unemployed oil field worker, with emphasis on the unemployed. Well, he wasn't, and that was a lie. In my opinion, Ricky is as honest and sincere as anyone I've ever known. So, to begin, understand that this story came to us through the son and the daughter-in-law of Roscoe White. Who's the us? Well, it's myself, Larry Ray Harris, and Larry Howard that he came to first of all. What did he come to us with? This is the footlocker that the diary was found in. To the right photograph, is a Navy pistol carrying case. It's waterproof and used on the ship. It usually carried either a .38 pistol or a .45 automatic. And that's the big find, because we haven't seen the diary. Next slide is the 2 safety deposit box keys and the Wynwood State Bank envelope. To the right is a similar diary as to what was found in the locker. The real one is gone, but this was a typical, you've seen them with the clasp and lock and all of that stuff. They constantly saw Daddy Roscoe writing in that. He kept the diary all through his Marine Corps tenure and up until 3 weeks before he was killed. Here's a list of the contents of the metal canister in total. Number 1 was Roscoe White's Marine Corps dog tag and neck chain. Number 2, news clippings pertaining to the JFK assassination, along with photo negatives of members of White's family, all of which had been laminated between 2 clear plastic sheets. The dog tag and family photos, by the way, I think were basically in there to identify the ownership, who the canister belonged to, and therefore the origin of the contents. There were 3 typed messages. You see that on the right, on the far right. And these typewritten messages were from Navy Int, I-N-T, like Navy Intel. They were 2 Mandarin, and Ricky had learned from the diary that was Roscoe's code name. And then there's Roscoe White's serial number on each of the messages, and it's signed off by someone named C. Bowers, and the initials OSHA followed that. There's also the cryptonym RE Rifle at the very bottom of each message. We'll look at them closely as we go on here. Lastly, there was an old and mutilated copy of a stenography textbook. That's the green book that you see up there. Is entitled New Universal Dictation Course by Graham. It's about, I think I saw a date of 1926, so it's a real old book, and we'll spend a good deal of time going through that. We went to, how many of you know the name Earl Goals? Most of you do that have studied this case for a long time. He was a Dallas Morning News investigative reporter. He had left the Dallas Morning News and gone to the Austin American Statesman. So I called him up, and he did a front page story in the Austin American Statesman on August the 5th, 1990. The whole world picked up on the story. Father says Dad killed the president. And so it went worldwide. It was a good time for us at the center then to have, there's the front page of it. But this is the news conference. Every news media outlet that you can name were there that day. Robert, were you there?
Yes.
I thought you were. Did you ever see such a big crowd of people? I hadn't. Anyway, we made the announcement about the story, and Ricky got up and spoke and told about it. That's him on the right, and we're at the JFK Assassination Center there in Dallas. It had been newly opened. What we told them had to do with Roscoe Anthony White. That's him in the left photograph. You're looking down the barrel of a rifle he's sighting down there. He's still in the Marine Corps at that time. Photograph on the right is his Dallas Police class, where he went to work for the Dallas Police Force. The white arrow points to him in the middle on the first row. That, we were told, means that he was the top cop out of that class. So he was not just a nobody, and he was top of the class type. Next slide, that's Roscoe and his wife Geneva and their friends. That's J.D. Tippett, Lee Harvey Oswald, and Jack Ruby. How do we know they're friends? Because of what they told us and what we found out. The next picture, you'll love this one. This is Geneva White, Roscoe's wife, and Ricky's mother. That's, guess who, on the left. Mr. Ruby, and I'm supposing by the furniture that's his apartment, and he's checking her out. He's going to hire her when he took a nice photograph. Geneva told us that Roscoe actually took the photograph. On the right is her. She was hired as a cigarette girl. They're the ones that went around and sold cigarettes in the carousel and in the Club Vegas. I believe that picture was taken, from what I remember, at the Club Vacus, and she's just dancing on the table there. Interesting lady. All right, back to the diary and the stunning revelations that we found in it. I'm going to go through this, but before I do, let's discuss some other notable diaries. That's some of the contents. I didn't show you that one. That's some of the contents of Roscoe's military footlocker. You'll see two of the backyard photographs, one up at the top and one over here at the far left. The rest of them are police department photographs, letters from Roscoe and Geneva back and forth to each other during the military. That's a whole story too that I'd like to maybe get into before this is over. But let's look. First of all, that diary to the far left, closest to me, is John Wilkes Booth's diary. His diary was found in his coat after he was shot and killed Lincoln. It was not produced in the trials of the conspirators. 4 of those conspirators, which you didn't learn about in school probably, were hanged. And the diary seemed to disappear for about 2 years. When it was found in a forgotten War Department file cabinet, more than a dozen pages had been cut out and were missing. I think the total was 18, which means if they were written on both sides, 36 pages of Booth's diary disappeared. What could they have told us? The other diary next to it is Sirhan's diary. During a search of Sirhan's home after Robert Kennedy's assassination, police found 3 spiral-bound notebooks. One of the notebooks contained 48 pages of politically based ramblings regarding the terrorist state of Israel and the United States treatment of the poor. The next one beside that, I believe that's the one. No, Oswald is at the far right. He had a 12-page journal, a record of his activities while he was in Russia. It is considered by many to have simply been used as a prop to portray him as a communist. What I'm thinking about, how many males here kept a diary or keeps a diary? One over there. Okay. It's a very unusual trait for the male to keep a diary, but these assassins do. Anyway, the other one is Arthur Herman Bremer's. He attempted to assassinate in 1972 presidential candidate George Wallace of Georgia. His effort was unsuccessful and only crippled Wallace for life. Bremer had penned a journal of 161 pages. In it, he called himself, quote, "one sick assassin," and wrote about shooting Richard Nixon and afterwards shouting, "something cute," he says, like Booth did. So a diary of an assassin is not an unusual case. In fact, it kind of gives some validity to Roscoe having one. Here's one I want to talk about particularly because I think a diary was kept by these people, maybe as protection. This is Alan Lawrence Pope, and he was a CIA contract agent and pilot. And this is probably as good an example you'll find of a diary as protection. In 1958, the Marine unit on Okinawa had provided extensive military support for a huge-scale CIA activity against the government of President Sukarno of Indonesia. And then we got a little small tie-in of Roscoe with that, because on March 15, 1958, Marine Roscoe White had departed Cuby Point, Subic Bay in the Philippines for Okinawa. He remained posted to this location until September 2nd, 1958. It was during this period that the island of Okinawa, as well as the Philippines, was being used as an assembly area for vast stores of arms and equipment in preparation for one of the CIA's most ambitious peacetime operations, the overthrow of the Sukarno communist regime. 2 months after White's arrival at Okinawa, CIA pilot Pope, flying a modified B-26 bomber, was shot down by Indonesian anti-aircraft fire after accidentally bombing a church and killing most of the congregation. Pope and his crew of mixed nationality were rescued and taken into custody. Upon searching Pope, the Indonesians discovered all kinds of routine identification documents, which left no doubt that he was a U.S. Air Force pilot. He also possessed a diary containing detailed entries of various bombing missions. Of course, the U.S. government's reply to all of that was what? They categorically denied providing any support to anti-Sukarno forces. And in business as usual fashion, the New York Times scolded the Indonesians for circulating false reports that the U.S. was giving aid to these rebels. Here in the Indonesian affair, we see established the pattern of official lying to cover up involvement or failure. It is a pattern which would be used again in the U-2 Russia affair, as well as the Bay of Pigs. The phrase categorically denies would really manifested itself in the Roscoe White diary affair. These examples make, to me, the existence of a diary by Roscoe White even more probable. I ask, since the diary was missing, if Ricky and Tricia could recreate the page for November 22nd, 1963. And both having read it multiple times, sit down and type this out for me. And let me go to it, because I'll read it to you. The diary was made up entirely of dates, places, and activities in the life of Ricky's father. There were no names in any of the entries. However, there were descriptions of various military operations, activities, and assignments. One of them was called Operation Tunglin, and you can Google that, and you'll find it described. There was also an account in the diary of a paramilitary type operation in which a 60-man team, apparently led by Roscoe, attempted to take out an airstrip in Taiwan, which was unsuccessful. Another entry appeared to describe the assassination of a Chinese diplomat. Let me say right here, because I probably will forget it if I don't tell you, Roscoe confessed to his pastor, a guy by the name of Reverend Jack Shaw. Very trustworthy, believable man. And he told the preacher that he had killed, he was involved in 10 assassinations. He also confessed that he had taken life on both foreign and domestic soil. What all he did, we'll never know. A smaller, more elite team was mentioned later called RE Rifle, a term similar to the CIA's term ZR Rifle, the agency's cryptonym for their executive action or assassination program. Now, that was not a well-known term by the time Roscoe died in 1971. We'll see this term again a little bit later. An entry written during White's training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, refers to a meeting with an important man who was not named, but Ricky would one day meet an influential friend of his father's who he believed to be this important man, a man by the name of Colonel Carl Bond, spelled B-O-U-N-D. All in all, for Ricky, the book was a tedious, uninspired, and mostly innocuous reading. Some of the writing was hardly legible, and you'll see that when I get to the Green Book. He had never been a rabid reader of anything, much less something as dry and boring as his father's journal. Therefore, it is little wonder that it took him 2 years, until 1984, to finally reach a section which immediately captured his attention. The words of the entry for November 22nd, 1963, literally jumped from the pages of the diary. Ricky was stunned and sick at heart, went to his mother, and they cried together. They read it over and over again. Then he read it again. Here's what he created for us. We learned from the diary that the code name for Roscoe was Mandarin, and he starts out 11/22/63, Lebanon, 6th floor, Saul, Records Building. Mandarin, Stockade Fence. Shots fired from upper buildings for diversion. Shots fired, looks as if target was hit. Shot from fence, definite hit. Man on the other side of fence in the way. Shots again from upper buildings, no hit. Target open, fired, definite hit. Gun retrieved by man to the side. Took to rail car area. Whirled over fence, took man down to protect myself. Ran around back of fence, down embankment to car, drove to Oak Cliff. Met officer. Told officer not to drive by house. Something was at this point wrong. Forced to take out officer at 10th and Patton. Not going as planned. Backtracked to car, drove back to the area of takeout to locate other passenger. Failed to transport subject to Redbird, meaning Redbird Airport. Realized what a mistake I had made. Hope it is all over. Back to the PD, awaiting information. Question to ponder, I guess, after hearing what Ricky had read in the diary is were there other operations, either top secret or sensitive, that are revealed in the diary? And that would pose as much of a problem also. All right, here's the next slide. We're going to go look at the rest of the contents of the mysterious canister. The total contents were this: an old and somewhat mutilated textbook entitled The New Universal Dictation Course by Graham. Number 2, several news clippings pertaining to the JFK assassination. And I've talked about some of this, but when we got them, the plastic, we finally discovered what that plastic was. It was the type of plastic they used to use in old convertible cars. You know, the old tops, and they had the plastic rear window. This was what it was, we found out. And between these were the 3 typewritten messages, and they were laminated together. We did manage to take off a corner of the paper, and it was paper of pre-64 vintage. We had the type analyzed and the ribbon. They could analyze the ribbon that was used at that time for the typing, and both of those were pre-64 stuff. Then there's Roscoe White's Marine Corps dog tag and neck chains, and it's apparent, as I said previously, that the family photo negatives and dog tag were included so that there would be no mistake as to who all this stuff belonged to. Here's a picture, and again, this is the best we could do through the yellowed plastic. We didn't want to take those out. But these are the 3 messages. I'm going to blow up each one of them and let you take a look at it, and I'm going to talk about each one, and you can kind of get an idea of what we came across. Here's message number 1. Starts out Navy Int at the top. Code A, MRC. Remark data, 1666106. And then it says foreign affairs, foreign is misspelled in it. Foreign affairs assignments have been canceled. The next assignment is to eliminate a national security threat to worldwide peace. Destination will be Houston, Austin, or Dallas. Contacts are being arranged now. Orders are, and there's some illegible writing there, change at any time. I think it's saying orders are subject to change at any time. Reply back if not understood. And then the typewritten C, Bowers, and OSHA. That's not OSHA as we think of today. At the very bottom of the page is the RE rifle, code AAA, and destroy /own/. That's at the bottom of each of the messages that we'll look at. Second message, same data at the top. and this is Code A, Dallas destination chosen, your place hidden within the department. And this is a little significant statement here. Contacts are within this letter. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know whether there's some coded message as to who his contacts are that's in the letter itself, or was there a microdot? There is discussion of microdot by the House Select Committee when they approached Ricky and Geneva about it. We'll probably never know that. Last message is this one. And here the code is C, remarks Mandarin code C, whereas the others were code AAA. Don't know what that means. It says stay within department. Witnesses have eyes, ears, and mouths. You know what to do of the mix-up. The men will be in to cover up all misleading evidence soon. Stay as planned. Wait for further orders. Of course, we've been advised by people in the know, so to speak, that the format of these messages were not standard to any agency. And I say, so what? To me, that's totally irrelevant. I hope it is to you, because if they were messages that Roscoe was accustomed to receiving from his superiors at the time, whoever that might be, then no problem. This is something he could count on. These were orders from his superiors, and he carried out the orders. Okay, we'll go to the Green Book. It's called the Green Book because it's green, but we called it the Witness Elimination Book because you'll see why. The book is an old, as I said, mutilated copy of the New Universal Dictation course by Graham. The book was discovered among the contents of the Navy-issued cylindrical-shaped, gray-colored metal pistol case. It had a serial number of 7 digits and was dated 1965. Roscoe White's son, Ricky, had spoken of his father's diary, having talked about a witness elimination program which followed the assassination, and that details of this program were described in another book or diary. Therefore, this Green Book was believed to be and came to be called the Witness Elimination Book. In fact, you'll see the book called itself that. The book, the front portion of the book and its first 186 pages have been torn out and are missing. The remaining pages of the book have been utilized as a sort of scrapbook. The book has been turned upside down so that you start from the back of an upside-down book. And it contains various clipped and pasted newspaper photographs. It also is filled with scribbled, handwritten, and difficult to decipher notations and code-like number sequences. The following are several pages of the book and my description and maybe try to help you understand a little bit because I saw the original. These are not as clear copies as I would like to have, but this is the inside back cover and the first flyleaf, I guess you would call it. It has written up at the top, upside down, page 121, there on the left side. Then down at the bottom, there is a series or a sequence of numbers, like code numbers. And I believe that's what they are, because you'll find this all the way through the book. I guess I ought to say this. Maybe you can understand what I'm trying to say. The thing was so poorly put together, it's like a fifth grader may have tried to do it. And when Ricky found it, he tried to hide it from us because he was ashamed of it. His daddy couldn't write. He scribbled, number one. But also, when you see the news clippings that are pasted in there, it looks like somebody that, wasn't good with his hands. So, in my estimation, that's probably further proof of the authenticity of it, The guy did what he had to do. All right, the one on the right, the 2 pages on the right is the inside of the other cover. And this is where you find a very telling, little significant piece of information. did I tell you that not including the back covers, there were 24 pages of clippings and so forth? And so inside cover of the top says players are witnesses, which means that's the topic of the book. At the bottom is a handwritten sequence of numbers, perhaps some kind of code. These number sequences appear throughout the Green Book. On the facing page, top, R.A. White and the number, his Marine Corps serial number, 1666106. On the inside cover of the upside-down book, we also learn the reason behind the creation of the scrapbook, because here's what it says, and I'll blow that up so that you can see it. It's along the left side of the far page, going up and down in that picture. But blowing that portion of it up, it looks like this. And it reads, quote, 28 people died from witness program. Take out the rest of people later, unquote. Below that statement is another handwritten sequence of numbers, but right under those numbers is the signature of Roscoe Anthony White, and that is his signature, which means he's the owner of the book and the writer of that statement above it. There are other illegible handwritten notations on the page, as well as notations which have been scratched out, which we kind of wonder what those were. Ricky told me he did nothing to the book, and he certainly didn't scratch out anything. Here are the next 4 pages. This is kind of the start of the book. Make sure I'm not skipping something. On the left-hand side at the top are photo shows Jack Ruby arriving at the courthouse for his sanity hearing. His escorts are Dallas County Sheriff Bill Decker and one of Ruby's attorneys. The news clipping date is June the 13th, 1966, which gives us some idea as to when all this was put together. There are 3 long pencil strokes across the photo. This is a pattern throughout the book, and the meaning of those pencil strokes is unclear. The handwritten notation at the bottom of the page appears to read, "Good men die for good," right? And a question mark. Below that is another series of numbers. On the top right is another news clipping which reads, the moment the world stood still. And there are 4 long pencil strokes across this clipping. Barely visible in the dark background, and you probably can't see this, is 1963 November. Above the news clipping, we see the handwritten notation, "Even now from Bay of Pigs die, N.O." Now, that's N.O. is in caps, and I don't know whether it's saying no or New Orleans, because he was in and out of New Orleans too. President John Kennedy and his young brother are at the lower left, and of course, Robert is the Attorney General, and this appears to me to be a photo. I've not found it yet, but it appears to me to be a photo of the McClellan Senate hearings. Kennedy is not president then; he's a senator, and Robert Kennedy is one of. Was he a senator at that time of those McClellan hearings? Anyway, that's when they got so mad at Hoffa. You remember when he got so mad at Hoffa? And I believe that has to do with that, but I've not found that clipping, and I'm still looking, so help me. Below the photo is the handwritten notation that you'll all recognize. Now got the head, going tail ladder. He misspelled later. Going tail later. And of course, you're all familiar with Ed Becker, the Las Vegas entrepreneur who told the Washington Post that Carlos Marcello, in September 1962, that Marcello said he ought to take care of Robert Kennedy and that he would recruit some nut to kill JFK so it couldn't be traced to him. According to several accounts, Marcello told Becker that, quote, "the dog," meaning President Kennedy, "will keep biting you if you only cut off its tail," meaning the Attorney General. but the biting would end if the dog's head was cut off. So I think that's interesting that Roscoe put this in there, and with that little statement. The lower right, there's several rows of illegible handwritten number sequences ending with the words which appear to read hog or pigs. What that means, your guess is as good as mine. The news photo of accused assassin Lee Harvey Oswald with the caption Lee Harvey Oswald called lone assassin, and there is one long pencil stroke across his face. Below Oswald's photo is a handwritten notation that appears to read, "Man die with honor as all men. Good luck, Lee." Further below the Oswald photo and notations is a news photo of a young and attractive blonde-headed woman. Again, there is one long pencil stroke across her face. Underneath her picture is a handwritten notation which appears to read, "She," and then three illegible words, "Love your place, die, God, me," which is, those three words are underlined. I believe this woman looks like Mariella Novotny, one of several lovers that Robert and John had together even, and she was also thought to be a possible foreign intelligence risk link. There's another handwritten number of sequences at the bottom of the page. I wish we could find someone who knows code, because I definitely believe these are telling us something. Continuing with the canister notebook, and looking at the top photo of the next series. At the top of the page on the left is a handwritten notation at the top of the page that reads, quote, "Mandarin kills K, uses 7.65 Mauser in assassination," and then illegible, unquote. Below the notation, of course, is that familiar Mary Mormon photo, and you'll notice that it has, and I'll blow this up in the next slide, above the picket fence, it has a large black dot with an X through it. And at the very bottom of the page is another handwritten sequence of numbers. At the top of the page on the right is a scribbled notation which appears to read lambs. What does that mean? Below the notation is a news clipping of a photo taken by the Secret Service during their reenactment. And it just shows their interpretation of what it looked like from the sixth floor Oswald window to an open limousine on Elm Street. Again, here's the four long pencil strokes across the automobile. At the bottom of the page are two more lines of handwritten numbers. Looking at the bottom photo on the page on the left, there at the top are illegible handwritten notations. Below the notations is a news clipping photo of Oswald in custody of the Dallas police. That's Detective Elmer Boyd and M.G. Hall in the background. Below the photo are handwritten notations that appear to read illegible, Amos Ewings, which most of you know was a witness to the assassination. Something peculiar about how they treated him. Looking at the page on the right, another news clipping, this of Dallas Police Detective J.C. Day, who is in charge of the crime lab, and he's holding the rifle of the alleged murder weapon high above his head. Below the clipping is Roscoe writes, quote, 7.65 Mauser, our gun used in killing President Kennedy, 1963, November 22, 1963. I don't know what you think, but a guy leaves something like that, would you call that a confession? A handwritten, it's about as close as we'll come, I think, to a confession. The next slide is that blow up, and you can see more clearly the dot and the X above the picket fence, right above the three men on the steps there. Then on the left of the, on the right of the page, the left-hand page, there's a handwritten notation at the top of this page. It's got one photograph on it, and it says, "Trial doesn't surprise me." Can anybody tell me who that guy is? Who? Barry Raymond Rousseau in the Clay Shaw trial. He's a witness down there. At the right of Rousseau's photo are the words, "Big mouth, you talked after all." More illegible handwritten notations appear at the bottom of the page. At the right side of this page, there are handwritten notation which appears to be a name. I'm talking about on the right side now. Go to the two photographs over there. And below that is a crew-cut uniformed military officer. I think it's the rank of colonel on his collar, but they're very unclear, and I'd like to find the newspaper that these were taken out of. I think they're important to Roscoe, so they may be important to our quest for truth about the assassination.
Larry says that he thinks that's shorthand up there.
It may be. It may be. There's a lot of shorthand on those written the existing pages, and but most of them it seems to be in his handwriting and pencil. On the original, there's a shoulder patch on this guy's left shoulder, and it's the 1st Aviation Brigade. It's the patch of the 1st Aviation, and that's what Oswald was attached to. His identity and connection, if any, is unknown. So please help me. The reason I'm putting this out is I want you to pass it around. Somebody somewhere may be able to recall seeing that it may have been some military newspaper, for instance. I don't know. Below this photo is another news clipping of another officer, military officer. I think he's first lieutenant, maybe a captain. What's the little 2 bars mean? That's a captain, okay. Below this photo is another illegible handwritten notation that may be a name. So I believe he scribbled the name under that one, and he scribbled the name above the top one. I can make out the K, and it looks like the first name might be Carl, K-A-R-L. And the middle name looks like it starts with an E, and then I can't really tell what the third name or the last name is. Casey, you're going to find this next page kind of fascinating, I think, when I get to it. What happened there? Did I do that?
No, it's just formatting, Gary.
Okay. I did a better job of formatting than that. Well, anyway, you can still see what's on there. You recognize the top 2 very easily. That's Kennedy and Johnson. Below them is Ralph Yarborough and John Connally. And did I miss a slide? Excuse me just a minute. I believe I did, but it doesn't show up anywhere. I told you I wasn't tech smart. Okay, we'll talk about this one. One of the other pages, it's real funny. The pages that I evidently screwed up on. There's 2 photographs on one page and 2 photographs on the other. The top one on the left-hand page is a guy with horn-rimmed glasses. Looks very professional. I believe it's Maurice Gatlin. Those of you who don't know who Maurice Gatlin was, he was one of Guy Bannister's in New Orleans cronies. He's one that got pushed or fell or had a heart attack and dropped out of the 6th floor window of a hotel in Panama in 1965. Panama ought to mean something to you, Casey. What's he doing down in Panama? On the below that is a picture, I think, of Ella Romatish, who was another one of the party girls through Bobby Baker for the Kennedy boys. And she was a German girl who became a Washington party girl and had ties to the East German government officials as well as the Soviets. I was a security threat and was known to be a security threat. And I think that's who that picture is. On the next page is a picture of a very masculine-looking blonde-headed woman. And I believe this woman, and you can't make this stuff up, believe me. This woman may be, and I think it is, a well-known female impersonator who went by the stage name, listen to this, Mr. Harvey Lee. She often performed in drag at a New Orleans burlesque theater called the Club My Oh My. I've been there. The only possible connection I could find was that both Mr. Lee Harvey and Roscoe were from Arkansas. I believe there's probably another tie, but I don't know what it is. The bottom news photo is of two unidentified men sitting at a conference table in suits, very professional, looked like attorney. And then there's 4 long pencil strokes across this picture. I'm sorry it's not up there. But under it, it says cover up starts now. Interesting little tidbit. All right, the picture of Johnson and of Kennedy up there. Kennedy's called the reluctant peacemaker, and Lyndon Johnson is called, under his caption, is disagreement reported. What that means is because Ralph Yarborough and John Connally, senator from Texas and the governor of Texas, there was a split in the Democratic Party, the Johnsonites and the Kennedyites, of the party. And that's the reason he came to Texas in the first place. So about below the top 2 pictures is the handwritten notation, peace with world, learn wisdom. There's an illegible handwritten notation to the left of JFK's picture and an illegible handwritten notation below the bottom 2 pictures. There are no pencil marks on the pictures of President Kennedy and Senator Yarborough. Johnson's picture has a pencil check mark, and Connally's picture has 2 pencil strokes. Casey, you'll love this. On the right-hand page, the blow-up is a copper penny, Lincoln head penny with a hole in the head. In Roscoe's book, that's a photograph of a sitting President Abraham Lincoln with his head torn off. Guess where the coin is found? In Lafitte's book, right there with the stamp, the Nazi stamp and the Nazi coin. You called it out this morning, but you didn't notice the hole. And I don't know what that means, but it's interesting. This particular one I find highly interesting. This is Roscoe White, second from the left. These 4 men, the 3 are unknown, are standing in water. Ricky thought it was taken at Okinawa. I'm not sure that it was, because the only one with a dog tag, it looks like, is Roscoe. And anyway, we need the identification of the other 3 men. So I want this out as widely spread as possible and see if we can't find out. They may know something.
Jerry,
Go ahead.
third man over to the right, Bill Simmons may have identified him
Really?
as a Navy commander. And of course, you're Navy and United States Marine Corps.
I'd like to hear from him. Okay. The next slide, and we're nearly through. This, folks, is the surveillance papers from the surveillance of Ricky and Tricia White prior to them having any knowledge of what the diary said, or even seeing or hearing. They only heard about the diary and knew nothing about the Green Book or the messages. And they're surveilling them? It's a mystery to me. The next one is one I would like to be seen around and around the place. This is torn out page, or torn off a page, and in Roscoe's handwriting. At the top is CPL, I'm guessing Corporal Sams. Then there's Phelps, CB Johnson, Knight, Kinoshita, Foster. I'm not real, that's Kashivas or something like that. And then there is Hampton, and then there's Lynch. The House Select Committee, when they came to the House and got this among the other stuff, were very, very interested in those names and took them back to Washington with them. You won't read anything about them in the House Select Committee papers, but it's significant, I think, that they were interested. Well, we'll probably never see Roscoe's diary. It's gone the way of the missing pages of Booth's diary. But I agree with Edwin Hackett Fisher, a historian, when he says, history is not what happened, but what the surviving evidence says happened. If you can hide the evidence and keep the secrets, then you can write the history. So in conclusion, 2 or 3 things. Just who was Roscoe Anthony White? Was he insane? Did he fabricate the whole story? And what kind of man would do this and leave it behind as a legacy for his family? A family who, according to all those who knew him, he loved dearly. Roscoe White's entire life is in conflict with such an action. Or was Roscoe White a soldier for some secret elite group within this land or internationally? A group who believe they know best. Jack Ruby, a big-time player in the affair, said this: everything pertaining, this is a quote, to what's happening has never come to surface. The world will never know the true facts of what occurred. My motives, the people who had so much to gain and had such an ulterior motive for putting me in the position that I'm in, will never let the true facts come above board to the world. And then there's this, which is a quote or a letter from a man by the name of Major Carlton Coon. He was a trained anthropologist who believed in and touted racial superiority, wrote a report to OSS Director General William J. Donovan, advocating that the OSS adopt a state policy of political assassination, utilizing an ultra-elite and secret assassination bureau. Major Coon rationalized, and I'm going to read this to you if you can't read it. This is in 1953, folks. The world is now too small and too tight to permit continuation of the process of trial and error. A mistake made in one quarter will of necessity spread rapidly all over the world, for all our apples are now in one barrel, and if one rots, the lot is destroyed. We cannot be sure that the clear and objective scholars who study the existing social systems and draw blueprints for a society to suit our technology will always be heard, or that their plans will be put into operations. We can almost be sure that this will not be the case. Therefore, some other power, some third class of individuals aside from the leaders and scholars must exist. And this third class must have the task of thwarting mistakes, diagnosing areas of political world disequilibrium, and nipping the causes of potential disturbances in the bud. There must be a body of men whose task it is to throw out the rotten apples as soon as the first spots of decay appear. A body of this nature must exist under cover. It must either be a power unto itself or be given the broadest discretionary powers by the highest human authorities. My question is who elects or selects the high power, or this third body or third class of men, and who elects or selects the highest human authorities, who is to give the broadest discretionary powers to this third class body of men? And then I asked the question, was Roscoe working with a group or for a group so powerful that they could carry out an assassination and then conceal the truth about their clandestine and forceful takeover of this country? Could Roscoe have been a man with a conscience, a man who at the end of the day realized his wrong and tried to make it right, knew of the lie and tried to expose it, knew of our nation's great loss and tried to help retrieve it? We may never know the entire truth about the Roscoe White affair. There is too much misinformation, disinformation, deceit, secrecy, and obfuscation. But mostly, there's simply too little real concern. If Roscoe White was trying to tell the truth and no one listens, then who are we? I'm not going to go over the reasons why I believe it, but you can tell that I do, and that I think it ought to be followed up on in every manner possible. And I hope some of you will take hold of the reins and run with this. Thank you very much for your attention. You're nice to me, and I hope you got a grasp.
Are there any questions for Jay Gary up here?
Got one right here.
Yes, right, yeah. Okay, the question, what happened to Roscoe?
Okay. Roscoe was working in 1971 for a welding company. And he went to work after lunch, after taking a lunch break, and struck his torch and blew up. The place just blew up, burned him. He manages to get outside. He's wearing his shoes and his belt by the time he got through. They took him to Parkland Hospital, and that's where he confessed to the preacher and told his boys, there was things sometimes you do that you regret later, and tears running down his eyes. But they called it an accident. I don't think it was.
Any other questions? Now, who do you think posed for the backyard photos?
Who do you think posed for the backyard photos?
Can we show that? Is there any way we could put that up?
It's on your PowerPoint.
It is. Where?
The backyard
Backyard
photos?
photograph?
Yeah, you don't have all three of them.
No. What he's talking, let me tell you this. Larry Rivera has done a great job of taking the picture of Roscoe standing in the water. Did you notice how he's standing? Exactly like the backyard photograph. Well, he's taken and placed that over Lee Harvey Oswald. The chin of Roscoe matches perfectly with the backyard photograph. The body matches perfectly. Roscoe's body matches perfectly. Okay. So it's a strange little thing, but I believe, and by the way, Roscoe worked with photography. He had his own dark room. In fact, he made what do you call those photographs when you change what they really are? He had the boys one time. He made up some photographs of the boys flying through the air, for instance. So this was not an unusual thing if Roscoe White created the backyard photographs.
And put somebody else's face onto any body.
Yeah, you can do all kinds of things even then. Any other question?
Right here, Robert.
Robert?
I mentioned the third backyard photograph with Geneva had.
Well, he was the only one at the time that had that third backyard photograph. And if you remember when they got into the Dallas police files, they found where they had gone over, or somebody had gone over to the backyard, a Dallas policeman by the name of C.W. Brown, and posed in the backyard photograph that no one had ever seen before. And then they had one of the photographs where they had carefully cut out that police officer, and so you see the photograph with the profile of the man only in white. So,
Yeah, I was gonna, if I remember correctly, when we were talking to Jack White as well as Gary Shaw a long time ago, that they were trying to look at that photograph and match the the chin and the nose shadow on the face. And so when we looked at the photograph, I go, well, there's no head. They cut it out. What were they trying to do? Well, this was the FBI again. So here we go with the FBI losing the head of somebody on this. So any other questions, guys? David, do you have any from the, okay. Well, guys, could you give a round of applause for
Thank you.
Mr. J. Gary Shaw?